Okay, so you asked us to explore the world of kink and BDSM, and we definitely listened.
We did. We've got the ultimate guide to kink, BDSM, role play, and the erotic edge right here.
And we're doing a deep dive. Now look, maybe you're already involved in this world, maybe you're just curious, maybe you've heard bits and
Right,
pieces.
a whole range of familiarity.
Exactly. So our mission here is to pull out the key ideas, the important terms, the really interesting insights from this guide.
But keep it clear, right, not get bogged down in jargon.
Yeah, make it click.
And this guide, I mean, it covers so much ground. Impact play, bondage.
Erotic role-playing, power dynamics.
It really goes into detail across the board, a pretty comprehensive look.
Absolutely. And one thing that just keeps coming up, it feels like the absolute bedrock of everything, is consent and negotiation.
You can't overstate that.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Consent in kink, according to this guide, isn't just like, yeah, okay. It's defined as this explicit, informed, verbal approval.
An enthusiastic yes,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. And it only comes after negotiation, after you've actually talked about what's going to happen.
And that's the crucial bit, isn't it? That active, informed consent is what really separates kink from abuse. The guide is super clear on this.
Yeah. It stresses it applies every single time. Doesn't matter how well you know the person. No assumptions.
Not at all.
And negotiation. That's the space, the time before any play, where everyone gets to talk openly, needs, wants, limits.
Fantasies, even fears. Get it all out there.
Yeah. And the guide suggests that figuring out roles can be a good starting point for that talk. You know, top, bottom switch.
Or dominant, submissive, or maybe sadist, masochist. It helps frame the conversation.
It's like setting the stage, yeah.
Yeah.
Laying the groundwork.
And this whole process forces you to think, right, what do I want? Where are my boundaries?
Totally. It's about putting those cards on the table, honestly.
The guide really hammers home that sharing information is crucial. For informed consent, obviously, but also for assessing risks and figuring out how to play safer.
So once we have that foundation consent, negotiation, the guide then walks us through some major areas. Let's start with impact play.
Okay.
This covers quite a range. Things like, spanking, slapping.
But also caning, flogging, even this thing called Florentine flogging. Whipping, too.
And the tools mentioned.
Huh.
Wow. I mean, your hands, obviously, but paddles, canes.
Slappers, crops, different kinds of floggers, courts, single-tail whips. Quite the list.
It is.
And what's really interesting is how the guide talks about the sensation. It's not just pain.
Right. It can be pleasurable for some people, or maybe a mix of pleasure and pain.
Yeah, it's incredibly subjective. What one person loves, another might find way too intense, or just not their thing.
Which comes right back to communication and starting slow, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The guide really emphasizes warming up, starting lighter, letting the body and mind adjust. A gradual buildup.
Seduction, almost.
Kind of, yeah. The goal is shared pleasure, ultimately, not just endurance.
And with specific tools, like canes, the guide gets practical. Talks about choosing them.
Right, like traditional rattan canes needing some flex. And suggesting you actually feel them, test them if you can.
In a physical store, ideally. Makes sense.
And length matters, right. Shorter ones are easier to control for beginners, maybe. Longer ones generate more force.
And the thickness, too. Diameter. Thinner canes give more of a sting.
Because the force is concentrated, yeah. Thicker ones, more of a thud. It spreads the impact.
And, get this, the guide mentions that rhythmic spanking or caning can actually lead to orgasm for some people.
Wow, really?
Yeah. There's an anecdote about misinterpreting someone's reactions, thinking it was distress, but it was actually buildup.
Which just underscores how important it is to really watch your partner communicate, not just assume you know what's happening.
Definitely. It also mentions bruising from caning. Says it's common, some even like the marks.
A physical reminder, maybe?
Yeah. And suggests cold packs afterwards to lessen it.
Good tip.
Then, floggers. The guide explained how the tail length affects things, longer tails, wider arc, more impact, but harder to control.
Whereas shorter tails give more precision. Good for beginners or tight spaces, maybe.
And the material of the tails is huge, right? Leather, rubber, they feel different.
Totally. Sting versus thud again.
Yeah.
Even softer stuff like fur or horsehair.
And it notes vegan options too, like plastic or rope. So ethical considerations are covered.
What I like is the focus on ongoing discovery, asking your partner, sting or thud, trying different things. It's a process.
Yeah, exploring together. Shifting gears a bit, sensation play.
Right, another big category.
This opens up different avenues, clips and clamps, pinching,
Hot wax, carefully applied, of course.
Right.
Knife play without breaking the skin. Electricity play.
Even tickle torture, cupping, fire play.
It's a really wide spectrum of sensations.
The guide uses that example of removing clips, how the feeling changes.
Yeah, from pressure to suddenly. Searing pain, which can be intensely pleasurable for some.
It really shows the diversity of experience, doesn't it?
Absolutely. How different bodies and minds respond.
Then there's sensory deprivation, intentionally limiting senses.
Like blindfolds, obviously. Sight deprivation.
But also sound, scent, even gagging, mummification.
Breath control and play falls under this too.
The anecdote and the guide. Blindfolded, gagged, cold basement, impact play.
Paints a picture, doesn't it?
It really does. Shows how taking away one sense can amplify others. Create a really specific mental space.
Heightens awareness, yeah.
Okay, let's get into bondage. The guide talks about the pleasures people find in it, which is interesting.
It's not just about being tied up.
No. It mentions surrender, breaking taboos, escape.
Anticipation, relaxation even. Erotic humiliation for some.
That feeling of being completely held, embraced, and maybe inner peace in longer scenes.
And it often ties into erotic role-playing, right? Using bondage within a scenario.
Definitely. But safety, hugely important here.
Paramount. The guide stresses having oops tools.
Yeah, like EMT shears the ones with rounded tips. And spare keys for any locks.
Non-negotiable, really. Gotta have a way out, quickly and safely.
And then aftercare. After any bondage scene, the guide says it's crucial.
Vital, it's at that transition back. Helps prevent drop.
Right. That feeling of sadness or disorientation afterwards.
Exactly. Aftercare can be processing feelings, cuddling, kind words.
A hug, maybe a lollipop, the guide suggests. And checking in later, too.
It's about reconnection, making sure everyone feels grounded and okay after intensity.
Makes sense. The guide also lists different types of bondage. Simple wrist and ankle restraints.
Blindfolds, thigh cuffs, arm restraints, hoods, full body bags even.
Quite a range. And it mentions basic rope ties, single column, double column.
Briefly touches on Japanese rope bondage, shibari, and other methods like scarves or sex slings.
And a really important point about self-bondage.
Oh yeah, the risks are much higher. You absolutely must have a reliable way to get yourself out safely.
Critical warning there. Okay, moving into erotic role play.
The imagination playground.
Yeah. The guide points out the overlap with BDSM. Roles, scenarios, props.
Power dynamics often come into it.
Just like everything else, clear communication, negotiation beforehand. Essential.
Absolutely. Need to be on the same page about the fantasy.
And it tackles practical stuff, too, like incorporating safer sex condoms, gloves into the role play.
Doesn't have to break the scene, apparently. Can even enhance the sense of care.
Interesting. It also cautions about getting too carried away with physically strenuous stuff. Remember, you're not actually a superhero.
Good point. Keep it grounded in reality.
The section on human-animal role play, like pony play, is quite detailed.
Yeah, it goes beyond just costumes. It's about embodying the animal species personality.
And how you interact, communicate. Safe words versus animal sounds, or body language.
It raises tricky ethical points, though. What if someone's deep in a role and can't use human language?
Right. How do you navigate that if they seem to hit a limit non-verbally? Requires serious trust and observation.
Definitely. Then the guide introduces forte femme, feminine dominance.
Which isn't just about stereotypes, it says. It's more about an inner power and sensuality.
Yeah, finding your power source by looking at icons who embody that, maybe.
And emphasizing seduction and persuasion over just force.
A different flavor of dominance.
Then there's training, like sex slaves or pleasure slaves. The guide tackles misconceptions head on.
Right, it's not just no chores, only sex.
No. It defines sex broadly, anything potentially leading to orgasm, and says training itself is an act of authority.
Setting specific goals is key, it seems, and reward and punishment come into play.
Interestingly, it notes punishment can sometimes become another excuse to play.
So, in more formal dynamics, maybe keep fun and punishment distinct?
Seems to be the suggestion. It also mentions the empowering aspect for the submissive in accepting punishment.
And challenges the idea that dominance can't enjoy receiving pleasure too.
Good point. Okay, now we're getting into more physically intense areas. Whole hand sex, vaginal fisting, and anal fisting or handballing.
Yeah, the guide really stresses communication and expectations here, like critically important.
Preparation, too. Lots of lube, absorbent pads, maybe vibrators.
There's gradual insertion, constant check-ins. Hand signals can be really useful.
Absolutely. For the bottom to communicate without breaking the flow, maybe?
And emphasizes it's often about the journey, the intimacy, not just reaching full penetration.
For anal fisting, it's described as an extreme act, but with potential for deep intimacy.
And notes, some people into heavy anal play might not identify with the wider BDSM scene.
But the main point, always, is that it should feel good for everyone involved.
Always. It mentions cleaning out before anal play, too. And lube, hygiene vital for preventing disease.
And highlights a maxim for anal fisting. The asshole must feel no pain.
Pretty clear.
Very clear. Okay, mindfuck, psychological play.
This sounds intense in a different way.
Yeah. Techniques like asking tricky questions, controlling information, lie low, lie in, lie out. Less is more sometimes.
So the top needs a convincing character while the bottom stays themselves.
That's the idea, yeah. And planning is essential. The top needs to be kind of split-focused.
Like in character, but also monitoring safety.
Exactly. That schizoid awareness, the guide calls it.
Yeah.
And aftercare. Still vital.
Makes sense after potentially intense psychological stuff.
The main risk mentioned is the bottom getting genuinely freaked out. So strategies for handling that are discussed.
Powerful stuff. Needs a lot of trust and care.
For sure. Then finally, taboo play or edge play, exploring darker fantasies.
Okay? This sounds like potentially tricky territory.
It is. The guide hammers home the importance of intent, never to actually harm and consent. Always consent.
It uses rough sex as an example, how initial fear might become enjoyment.
But stresses it should be about reclamation, recreation, exploration, never actual violation or dehumanization.
So it mentions themes like rape, domestic violence, hate crimes, incest, but within a consensual role-play context.
Exactly, where the loss of control is part of the agreed-upon fantasy, and that's what's titillating.
But it's not therapy, the guide warns.
Absolutely not. Seek professional help for real trauma. There's that anecdote about the wheelchair user.
Playing a victim role for empowerment.
Yeah. And playing the villain can be a way to acknowledge dark thoughts safely.
Interesting perspective. It mentions edge play becoming more visible in the BDSM world.
And connects exploring darkness to spiritual ideas, the unconscious.
Yeah.
It really pushes you to ask, where's my line?
What am I willing to explore? Could lead to surprising self-discovery.
Definitely. The guide also tries to clarify terms. Sadism, dominance, topping.
Which often get mixed up, right?
Yeah. Topping is just the action like flogging someone. The intent is key.
And it touches on psychiatric views. Consensual sadism isn't a paraphilia if no harm or non-consent is involved.
Right. And throughout all this, safety, risk, responsibility, it's woven through the whole guide.
A huge emphasis in the kink community historically, right? Mentoring, education.
Yeah. Explains the shift from safe SM to SSC, safe, sane, consensual, or RACK, risk-aware, consensual kink.
Acknowledging that safe isn't zero risk, but about being informed and taking precautions.
Doing your homework. And safe word's absolutely crucial, that immediate stop signal.
Non-negotiable. And getting references for new partners, vetting people.
Because many kinky people, the guide says, pride themselves on skill, experience, and integrity.
Ethical play.
And finally, back to aftercare one last time. Important for both top and bottom after any scene.
That transition again. Helping prevent bottom drop.
Being prepared snacks, comfy clothes, but mostly being ready to listen, validate, comfort.
Reaching out if you do feel that drop. Connection is the antidote. It's about nurturing the bond.
So wrapping up this deep dive.
Wow.
A few things really stand out.
Consent and communication, absolutely number one.
Yeah. And just the sheer variety of practices out there. It's fascinating.
And that constant thread of safety, respect, understanding individual needs.
Definitely. This guide feels like a really solid starting point for understanding a world that's often, misunderstood.
It really champions open exploration, but always grounded in mutual enjoyment and well-being.
We hope this gave everyone listening a clearer picture, whatever your starting point was. Maybe take a second. What resonated with you?
Any aha moments? What questions popped up?
Did it make you think about pleasure and pain differently? Or power dynamics and relationships generally?
It definitely gives you a lot to chew on, doesn't it? Where do those boundaries lie for you? What are you curious about? It's a fascinating reflection on human desire.